Okay, so I'm 10 minutes early because um, I didn't have to put in my live streaming things, which I usually have to do. Um, and I was just always trying to, make sure I get everything in order before I start. But so I'm 10 minutes early. Surprise! um, Monday meditation. Uh, meditation. What does meditation mean to you? Um, to me, meditation means something that I go over and over in my brain, um, and try and find like the most meat out of it, I guess, is kind of what I think of meditation in Monday meditation of what I'm doing. I know meditation is also where you perform or you go through a certain script, maybe, and you meditate on different aspects. So it could be on mindfulness, trying to be present. And so you would go through a script to be present, or calm, to meditate on being calm and stuff like this. So when I say Monday meditation, it's kind of more on an aspect of just kind of a thought that I want to have more meat off the bone, so to speak. And so both last week and this week were influenced or inspired by a message I heard from Pastor Stephen Furtick at Elevation Church. And this week he was telling a story about his dad. I'm saying a lot. He told a story about his dad sitting him down basically and being very vulnerable about his struggle with alcoholism, and telling Steve, his son, that giving him permission basically to not repeat the pattern, as he explained the pattern in his own father and grandfather. And it really struck me again that we need to give ourselves permission to break free from destructive patterns that were either modeled to us or that we somehow fell in ourselves. So we can look at external things like alcoholism, or maybe some people say if you end up on welfare, it becomes a culture. Kids brought up on welfare become welfare recipients. I don't know. I don't have any data or never looked at that. It's just something growing up I heard. So maybe it's not true anymore in the 21st century, but I remember hearing that as a child growing up. Well, they're just welfare kids. So, and so that would be awful to have that put on you as a child, that you're limited in your choices and you have to keep repeating this pattern. Maybe it's the pattern of poverty, might be a better way of putting it. So those are external things that we could talk about or whatever. But what I thought about myself from my own personal experience of destructive patterns was more in the thought realm. And for me, I never had like negative thoughts as a child growing up. I don't remember them, but I can look back and see how negative thoughts attached to certain traumatic events in my life. And I don't mean trauma as in everything had to be absolutely awful. Sometimes, like, one of the worst traumatic events in my life was losing a race when I was a child and being teased about it. And it just instilled in me this fear and shame of losing, that I still to this day still have to catch those thoughts of shame when I lose, and I have to change the channel basically. So let's think about this. Give ourselves permission to break free from destructive patterns. So first, I'm just going to talk about the permission point again, as I'm meditating on this phrase. Permission means I give it to myself. I don't have to wait for anybody else to give me permission to break free from a destructive pattern. It's kind of my deal. And hey, we all have lived with excuses, but most excuses are a bunch of BS, right? Like, so if, well, I'm just this way, or my family's always been this way, or it's in my DNA, or it's just the way it is, or blah, 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 or I have this disease, or blah, 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 or I have this limitation. Like all of the excuses we tell ourselves of why we can't break free from a destructive pattern, I'm just going to say it's BS. You have the power to break free from a destructive pattern. The second part, let's hear about the break free, breaking free from it. Now, I think a destructive pattern, it's not something you just decide you're just going to turn around and walk away from, because it's a pattern. And most patterns that are they're in our subconscious, right? Like, what do people say? Like, I don't know, it might be 90% of what we do, even like, I'm not looking at my face. I'm trying to not look at my face, because when I look at my face, then I'm down here. But how our face goes and how we inflect and if we talk with our hands, all this is subconscious. We don't think about it. I don't think to myself, I'm going to raise my eyebrows now. I have to make my muscles move and take my eyebrows up. I mean, it just happens. It just happens subconsciously. And so patterns that we have, whether they are our facial intonations, or if we talk with our hands, or whether it's thoughts that come into our brain when a certain thing happens to us, certain circumstance, a certain smell, a certain place, like it's subconscious. And so it's not as simple as just changing your mind and saying, hey, I'm not going to do that anymore. You have to literally change the course of how things happen in your brain. It's amazing. A long time ago, someone wrote, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And this was like Paul, he wrote this letter to people living in Rome. And he said, be transformed. That word literally is like the chrysalis, like a butterfly goes through, in the renewing of your mind. And it's funny because it hasn't been that long since neuroscience has caught up with the aspect that you can renew your mind. There's a whole field now on brain plasticity, which is amazing. It's not that old. And so literally our thoughts go on entrenched neural pathways, because this is how you always thought. So it's just the easiest to go this way. So if it's the easiest for my brain, if I lose or I'm in a losing position, it's the easiest for my brain to go to that shame and go to that giving up, quitting, because that's the pathway that's been entrenched. So to change that, to break free from that pattern, it takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of effort to create a new neural pathway and to stop the thought and say, I'm not going to go down that way that ends in shame or quitting, because that's not beneficial to me. And I'm breaking free from this pattern. So I'm going to catch this. I'm feeling it in my body. Where am I feeling it? Stop. Okay. It's just a game. It's just a game. Hey, it's just a game. Let's have fun. Change the neural pathway. So it's kind of surface, and I apologize if it seems too surface when someone is struggling to break free from, say, what Pastor Stephen was talking about, a family who had a history of alcoholism. And that's really difficult. I fully just free release everybody who needs it, me included. Professional help is awesome. And we need help. We need one another. We need support. We need people who we can be vulnerable with and say, hey, look, this is a shame I experience, and my reaction isn't against you. I'm trying to change my pattern and not think that way anymore. It takes takes work, but it also takes family, friends, team to come around us. We need our tribe to be vulnerable to be accepted, to be supported in no matter what it is we're trying to break free from, whatever destructive pattern, whether it's family, history of alcoholism, or maybe a history of suicide too. I mean, a history of dropping out of high school. The external things are hard. And then the history also of internal things, of just thinking I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, nobody likes me, I'm never included. All of those kind of things, we can break free from those destructive patterns. It's possible. So where's I going to go? I have to look at my notes. Sorry, I'm putting my head down. I just don't want to miss anything of what I wrote down when I was thinking about this. Oh, I had another kind of story from the Bible too, in this idea about patterns, because Saul was the first king of Israel. I don't know if you know the story. It's in the history books of the Bible. And the Israelites, God was supposed to be their king. And they had this relationship with God where he was going to lead them and he was going to be their king and protect them. And they got to possess their land. And they're like, everybody else around gets a king. We want a king, basically. And so Saul became Israel's first king. Now, what would you do if you were the first king? I know what I would do. I would look around at the cultures around me and go, well, what does a king do? What does a king do? And so Saul did all the things the kings around him did. He got a house or whatever, and had the land and got people to work for him, and he also found out how to fight the battles as the kings around him fought, and what armor you need and how you do this, and how many people you need and what's a troop and all this kind of stuff. And so he was right in the culture of what he was. But then there was this giant Goliath, and they were, doing the battle lines how they were supposed to do them. But this guy basically stood up and said, hey, just send one person out to fight me. And if I kill them, then you're our slaves. And if you kill me, then we're your slaves. And all of Israel was in shock and fear because this guy was so big. And along comes this shepherd boy, David. You've all heard of David and Goliath, I'm sure. And what did Saul do? He said, okay, well, here's the pattern. Here's the thing you need to do. Put on this armor, take this sword, take this shield. And David stood there and was just like, this isn't me. I can't do this. And he literally took the armor off, broke free from the pattern of what was supposed to happen. And he went out and he did it the way that he was skilled and what he knew to do, and he found the victory. So I thought that was a really good analogy, kind of a parallel story of how you find victory by breaking free from patterns that just aren't serving you. I know destructive is a big word. I'm dramatic, but any pattern that isn't serving you, that isn't bringing you forward into your growth, into how you want to live your best life, it's not serving you. So you want to break free from those patterns. It could be as simple as going to a coffee shop every day and getting a coffee on your way to work instead of taking that $5 and saving it or putting it towards debt. Like this is infinite of how you can apply this. But the important thing for me from last week as well, breaking free, give yourself permission to, walk away from tradition. To me, the important point again today is to give yourself permission to break free from destructive patterns. And so that's my meditation. I'm meditating on this week, just the aspect of what I want to meditate on and ask myself the question, what pattern in my life is no longer really serving me of where I want to go with my life. And that is what I want to break free from. There might be external things, like instead of driving to the barn every morning, I'm walking. So that's it. That's a pattern. It could be internal things like I talked about feeling the feeling, catching the thought, and saying, no, that I know that neural pathway is going to bring me to shame and feeling less than. That's not where I'm going to go. I'm just going to go to, hey, let's put this in perspective. It's just a game. It's a game, supposed to be having fun. Bless you. I am sorry I was 10 minutes early. And I will see you on Wednesday. I am going to go back to my original idea on Wednesday, and it wasn't actually wonder and awe, it was worship. And I'm just gonna play some music, and could be my own original stuff, or it could be other songs that I'm just gonna focus on freedom and finding that where you can just believe something bigger than yourself and to break out of those patterns that are not serving you. All right, bless